Welcome to Queer Conversations. It's been a while. I was doing a weekly show and now I've been doing monthly and sharing stories of the LGBTQ community. My guest today is Tiffany Richards. She's an LGBTQ advocate here in South Florida and perhaps throughout the world, right? Welcome.
Hi there.
Yes, hey, thanks for joining. Hey, Reese, thank you. So share this conversation, join in the conversation, ask questions, and just engage in this great chat we're about to have. So I have your bio. I'm going to read some of your bio.
Okay.
So Tiffany is an educator and an advocate with almost a decade of training and advocacy experience in the U.S. and abroad, including coordinating and facilitating programs and workshops on issues of equity, diversity and inclusion, and organizational change. Her expertise lies in addressing the intersectionality of various identities and the effects systematic oppression has on marginalized communities and ways to mitigate it.
It's a whole lot.
It's a lot. So we have a really great conversation. Can you explain some of these things of what you're doing? Okay, I see Cindy's on. Thanks for joining. Thank you everyone for joining. Okay, so Tiffany's current work deals with coordinating and implementing LGBTQ youth equity programs and policies in school districts. In this role, she works directly with school districts, families, community organizations, and other stakeholders to implement professional development trainings, best practices, and programs that create safe and inclusive learning environments for all students, especially LGBTQ youth. So let's start with this. What is all of this and what makes you do all this work?
So that was the brief bio.
Yeah, I know it's a brief. Yeah, there was more. I said, let me just get through some of this.
I need to make it a little bit more brief. So, I mean...
No, that's fine. That's fine. I don't usually read the bios, but I felt like how intricate it was that I wanted to read some of that. So talk a little bit. Let's start off with a little bit with, how come you're doing this kind of work?
So, I mean...
What drives you? And maybe a little bit about what you're actually doing.
So I guess I'll start off with what I do. So I'm the South Florida Safe and Healthy Schools Coordinator with Equality Florida. And Equality Florida is the largest LGBTQ advocacy and human rights group in Florida.
Yeah, big up Equality Florida. Great work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so in my role, I do really awesome work. I get to work closely with school districts to help them implement programs and practices that support LGBTQ youth. So, the statistics around LGBTQ youth are it's a bit saddening. Something around the number of, and so of course I'm gonna blank on the stats, although I do this.
That's fine. You can just give us a sense of what's going on.
Something around 75% of LGBTQ youth report feeling unsafe, bullied, or harassed at schools. And so, bullying is an issue, and it intersects with folks who are LGBTQ, and that leads to just disproportionate rates of, LGBTQ folks attempting suicide. So I think it's something like over 40% of LGBTQ youth have attempted suicide compared to around 16 or 15% of their straight peers. And this is something that we're seeing as LGBTQ issues are coming more and more into the forefront and people are becoming more familiar. We're seeing young kids coming out younger and younger. Mm-hmm. And so what we're realizing is that schools, in order for you to learn, you have to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And so if our students don't feel safe regardless of their sexuality, their race, their ethnicity, religion, then they can't really learn. And so we're working to build inclusive schools that are safe for everyone with a framework that talks about the importance of equity and talks about the importance of giving all of our students what they need.
And what age group is this?
So this is K through 12.
Wow, great.
So yes.
Great. So first graders.
So exactly.
Straight
and people are oftentimes, they're young, they don't know. And I think, with my colleague who's the LGBTQ coordinator in Broward County Public Schools, they often work with kids in elementary school. When kids are able to articulate their gender, say how they see themselves as young as 2 or 3, they can actually start saying, I think I'm this or I think I'm that. Mm-hmm. So
I'm in some of these Facebook groups, and someone recently posted, when he was young, he got teased all the time for being gay, and he's like, hey, I made it through. I'm here. I'm not understanding why is it that kids nowadays are not able to cope? Is it something that's changed? He felt like maybe that kids are so much more sensitive now. Is it that the bullying is more now? Is it more pervasive? Like, what are some of the factors that makes it be like that kids are really like saying like, I can't live with this?
Well, I think these issues have always been pervasive, and we're just now talking about this. We're talking about bullying and the impacts that it's having, you know, in every sense for all marginalized students. And so this notion of like, oh, I dealt with it, you know, kids need to toughen up. I mean, the way that I approach my work, it's very much, you know, if I had to go through things, for the things that, you know, people have to go through, I don't want other folks to have to go through that. So that approach of like, oh, I did, you know, I dealt with it, you know, they should too. We don't know what people are living.
Well, I say that we can't really compare like someone's anguish to this anguish,
you
right?
don't know, you know, how people are living their day-to-day lives, and you don't know what the impact has, or what, you know, your comment or your behavior, you know, how that impacts this person at a certain point. So I think this sort of, you know, it's good for you that you were able to kind of, you know, get through that, but we can't speak for other people.
Right.
We can't speak for how other people deal with these issues that are impacting them.
Right. And I was saying also that I think sometimes each generation looks at the other generation to say, like, maybe our grandparents are like, oh, I walked 10 miles uphill.
No, exactly.
It always feels like it was a little easy, you know, like you got through more challenging times. David says, hey, I can hardly read, love the aim of the work and what advocacy is being pursued. Great. Yes, thanks for joining us. Caroline is on. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So, how do you identify in terms of the LGBTQ rainbow or spectrum or community?
Alphabet soup.
Yes, alphabet soup.
I identify as a lesbian and a cisgender woman. I use she, her pronouns, she, her, hers. Yeah. And love being queer.
Great. I love it. And, you know, I generally ask people when they come on the show if they're comfortable sharing, like, some parts of their coming out story.
So, I mean, I often, especially now being in South Florida, where there's a large, so I'm Jamaican, and doing this work, I often, you know, the stereotype is that there aren't any gay Jamaicans, and, you know, I'm a gay atheist Jamaican, so I'm a unicorn.
Yeah.
My family's probably going to be angry about that. But no, so I oftentimes, in being in South Florida, where there are a lot of West Indians, a lot of Caribbean folks, a lot of Haitians and Jamaicans, I always make the point to say that I am Jamaican and that, you know, to share my coming out story. And so my coming out story, it's interesting because people might see me and like, they're like, oh, you know, who's she, where she's from? But my mother is very much Jamaican. I very much culturally identify as Jamaican just because it was such a strong part of my upbringing and just how I identify. And so for me, one of the first things, you know, when I started to realize that maybe I was different was that, you know, I was really afraid of what would happen with my family. We were really, you know, we were religious, and so I kind of approached it from that frame of like, well, it's a sin, you know, and all these different things. And for me, my notion of being different stemmed from like maybe feminism. I you know, early on, I was always, you know, because in Jamaica we sometimes have roles for the girl child and, you know,
of course,
and the boys, and it was always sort of, why did I have to do these things because I was a woman? And that was sort of when I started pushing back. And as I got older, you know, from just that pushing around gender roles, it was sort of like, okay, you know, I think that I might be, I couldn't fully accept that I was a lesbian, so I was like, I was bi, and I kind of like processed that. And then senior year of high school came around, and I was watching Boys Don't Cry on Logo, and I remember just like being really overwhelmed by everything that was happening. And I mean, my mother loved me, I had my friends, I knew that I'd gotten into college, and so in that moment I was just like, I don't have it that bad, I need to like, this is the time, I need to like tell her before I leave. I was just so moved by it, and I went into her room and I was like, Mom, I think I like women. And she was like, you think? And I was just like, yes. And it was sort of silent, and I left the room. I remember calling my best friend Angela, and I was just like, I think I came out. She's like, what do you mean by you think?
Hey.
Exactly. And I was like, I told my mom, and like, I told her what happened, and she was like, you told her that you think you like women? Like, you think? Like, I don't, you know? So it was
and she just replied with, you think?
Exactly. And so, I mean, it was a process of like having to come out, having to, you know, kind of like let her know that it was real, and like navigating that, worrying about disappointing her, worrying about, you know, the connection with my family. And I kind of, you know, it took me some time. I felt like I just assumed that no one would like, in my family would like care or would like care about me, would like, you know, they weren't homophobic, but I didn't want to bring it to them. And I preferred to kind of hide that part of myself. And so, you know, it took me like a few years to really come to terms with that and to kind of just like let my family in. And now it's like, they're really, really cool. We have like conversations that like 10, 15 years ago, I would just be like, wow.
Wouldn't imagine that you could have that. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, it takes time. For most people, it takes time, you know.
Definitely.
Yes. I see here. Hey, Nick, thanks for joining. Caroline. Yes, thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Tiffany. We got her here sharing her story as a coming out story as LGBTQ advocate and the work she does in the community. And so, what is it that drives you to do all this work?
I think for me, it's interesting because I feel as if I have been proximal, you know, to like really just like things that have impacted folks, the legacy of like colonization, you know, like poverty. Like I came from Jamaica when I was really young. I came to America when I was undocumented. My mother had me when she was a teen, and so I see the impact of just like all these negative things, but like my mother was able to give me the best life possible. And so through being so close to all of this stuff, I want to use the privilege, the opportunities that I've been given to like make things better. I think primarily about my education, and I think about how, you know, the way that like, you know, schools are funded by property taxes, and so you have poor schools in poor communities that are underfunded, and my process of navigating that, of getting transfers to go to the schools that really shaped, you know, my educational experience, that like I gained these intangible things that really prepared me for the world. And I felt like it was a matter of my ability, but also luck. And I don't want anyone else's life to be like that. I don't want luck to really determine the opportunities that people have, the ways that they can live their life, you know, their ability to live their life to the fullest. And so for me, it's sort of like, I feel like I need to pay it forward, that there are folks who fought for the rights and the privilege and the access that I have now, and this is my way.
Okay, great. I love that you're doing this work. So one of the things, and lots of people know the phrase, and some people don't know what we're talking about, intersectionality. Let's talk a little bit about that, because sometimes we take for granted that everybody knows this. And you know, I'm part of the Welcoming Schools program, where we go to high schools and talk to teachers. And lots of the teachers are like, what are you talking about? Because in the LGBT community, there's certain things, verbiage and words that we're using a lot. So would you share, like, what is intersectionality?
So intersectionality is, you know, a theory and approach. It was created by Kimberly Crenshaw, and she was a lawyer, if I remember correctly. She worked, she was looking at cases where there are instances of discrimination, and a black woman was arguing that she was being discriminated against, and the case was tossed because there weren't instances. They had women who worked there, and they had black men who worked there. So the argument was that we have women, we have black people, and so intersectionality was sort of coined to acknowledge that folks carry multiple identities, and as a result of those identities, they carry multiple types of oppression that can intersect, that can, you know, impact how they walk through the world. So, you know, my experience as a black woman might be different from someone who is a black, you know, my experience as a black queer woman is different than a black straight woman. You know, and that might come with different privileges, but also like, you know, different types of oppression. And so intersectionality, it's really, I view it very much tied in with equity. So it's acknowledging that, you know, we carry multiple identities and that those do intersect, and as a result, you know, we have different needs. Equality is more so everyone gets the same thing, and equity is about people getting what they need. And so intersectionality and acknowledging that, you know, because of our multiple identities, we're going to have different needs, and what may, you know, seem to suit the needs of all black folk or all women, you know, for those who are at the intersection of that, there might need to be something else. So, that's intersectionality, and we always, you know, in our trainings and our approach, we often try to talk about, okay, LGBTQ youth are facing these issues, but what about folks who are at the intersection of that? What about, you know, students who identify as LGBTQ who are also of color, who are also disabled, or also, you know, from a lower socioeconomic
or
class.
like immigrant families and
in
so
South
on.
Florida, we have issues around, you know, folks who may be documented versus undocumented, or access to resources that maybe don't realize that there might be barriers that LGBTQ youth of color or poor LGBTQ youth face, you know, that we're not thinking of when we're planning these programs or planning these support. So it's about being mindful of those things.
And do you feel like the schools are receptive and things are changing during?
So I mean, like, it's Broward County Public Schools has one of the best when it comes to LGBTQ and trans inclusive curriculum and support guides.
That's great.
It's really a vanguard nationwide. They
Excellent.
have
Yes,
they have an LGBTQ coordinator, which is the only position in the state of Florida.
Wow.
And so it's, you know, Broward is the 6th largest school district, and there's almost 300,000 students. And so what, you know, in addition to the policies and guidelines, we're working to train teachers on these things, to educate them, doing part, sensitivity training, but also these are the guidelines, these are what's expected of you. So, to work in a county that already has this built-in support, the superintendent Runcie of Jamaican descent,
yes.
He is
These
absolutely,
Jamaicans, huh?
He's absolutely fabulous. He,
Excellent.
not just when it comes to LGBTQ youth, but recognizing again that we have students who are at the intersectionality of all these different identities and experiences, and so our response, the support that we give them, needs to reflect that. And so, he has very much supported initiatives around supporting our LGBTQ youth. He hosts a superintendent roundtable where every 3 months we get together with different community agencies and community partners to share what's happening. And so we have the top-down support, but there very much are times when you go into schools and it is a bit difficult. You'll have teachers who, as we're giving trainings, will just say, well, I'm not going to do that. And it's
because of their own
because
beliefs?
of their own personal beliefs, because
of
they feel it's too onerous, it's too I don't want to do this.
Okay.
It's impacting their style, and it's so much. We're not trying to change your approach to education or your religious or personal values, but as an employee, as someone who's an educator, it is your job to educate and treat everyone fairly. So
you're working with the teachers and not the students.
No.
Right?
So we're working with. I get to do a bit of everything.
Oh, great. So you are with students as well.
So we do professional development trainings with teachers at schools, and then we also do support for Gay Straight Alliance or student societies. We plan the GSA Summit, so that's always great where we get to have students at these events. And so for a lot of these students, it's the first time or it's the only place that they feel comfortable.
Right.
So when they come to the summit, they get to bring all their pride gear. We have a lot of students who are like, I got to use the bathroom of my firm gender for the first time, and that's the only space that they have that. So I really love the chance that the opportunities that I get to work directly with our students and to support our GSAs and to go and to talk to them as well as to work with teachers.
Well, my first experience with high schools here in Broward a couple of years ago, Dee Palazzo invited me to a GSA summit, and it was here in Broward, and there were kids who were there who, I remember some of them said they weren't out, so if you're taking pictures to check in, so it was really a safe space, and they were really, I was so impressed at how many kids came out.
Oh yeah.
I was really very impressed with that.
I think we had almost 400 at this spring summit, and over almost 20 schools, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
So
it's funny, I wonder about with so many kids who are LGBTQ, back in our days, and I know my days is different from your days, but still, we're both much older than these children. How much of us were gay? It's because back then it felt like two kids were, and it was the really flamboyant boy who couldn't help himself, kind of thing, and you know what I mean? He just couldn't escape it in some ways, his personality. But I just remember thinking when I look back, it would just be maybe 4 or 5 kids, and now it's tons of children.
Our trans and gender non-conforming ancestors, the generation before us that couldn't hide it, that were the ones that were willing to put their bodies on the line, they have made it so that now this folks feel more comfortable. Yes. I think everyone's a little queer.
I think so too.
And I think
not everybody likes to hear that, but everybody's a little gay.
And I think now that we're in a place where language, it can reflect our experiences. It doesn't prescribe what we, how we should be. People are acknowledging this, that, maybe in the past there are things where, the gay in college thing and then you got married. But the fact that that's even a trope shows that, there is just this undercurrent of queerness that I think we just haven't acknowledged. I think people like to assume this is just now starting.
Right, but it's always been there.
It's always been there. It's, across cultures, across history. And so, I just think that we're just in a space now where people feel a little bit more comfortable to acknowledge it and accept it.
Hey Rich, hey Momo. Thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to ask questions, jump in the conversation. It was funny talking about ancestors. My mom always told the story of when she was a child, seeing this couple, and my mom comes from rural Jamaica, the parish of St. Elizabeth, and she said there was a woman who always wore trousers, right, and lived with a woman who always wore dresses, and they lived together. And when she got older, she was like, oh, that was probably a lesbian couple, but she said nobody cared.
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you that she left Jamaica in 1953, so this is the 40s, right? And people were not caring. and something happened where people just really started to get so much more wrapped up, more in the urban settings, because I'm from Kingston, which is very different from the country. But it's like people got themselves so wrapped up and so invested in like making sure that people weren't gay.
Yeah, and I think like, that's the issue. It's always the reaction to that, because people are often like, well, why do you have to like identify? Why do you have to be? And it's like, well, homosexuality was created as a term, as a medical, as a term to medicalize the condition. And so when rights are predicated on these labels, you kind of have to like organize around it.
Right.
So I think that like, and you have instances of this across cultures again and traditions. I think of people kind of taking on different gender roles or kind of having these relationships. My undergrad dissertation was on like the literary circles in turn of the century Russia, where you had these crazy like three-way relationships and like this whole thing around intellectual love and like this was happening. This was happening in salons and circles all across Europe at the time. I think like again, like in India you have the hijra, which is like like a sort of a third gender. Now they're talking about like it's more so falling under like the trans umbrella. But you have sworn virgins in Albania who were, if you were the only child or there were no males, you can like adapt the the cultural role, the role of a man. Wow. And there are all these instances. So I think that like we're getting kind of caught up now on like the language, because the language is what we're using to like help us find each other, to help kind of like describe this experience that we're all living. And for the folks who are like, oh, the labels were put upon us,
Right. I mean, there's a lot of people now who are saying no label. I mean, it's nearly becoming a label, the no label. I like the idea of identifying for myself, and also to connect with people who also identify that way. Like you said lesbian, I'm like, yeah, I'm a lesbian too. But I also can appreciate someone's like, I just want to be, I just want to be. So, both sides, I definitely understand. So, in addition to everything that we've discussed, are you involved in the Caribbean Pride?
So, yes, this weekend.
So we're in Fort Lauderdale, and this weekend, which is it May 10th and 11th? The Friday and the Saturday?
No, it's just the 11th.
The 11th.
Yes,
okay, so Saturday 11th is, let me let you talk a little bit about it.
So yes, this Saturday, May 11th, is Caribbean Pride Fest, and so it's the 5th annual, and it will be in, is it Huizinga?
Huizinga. Yeah.
It's downtown at like First Ave and Los Olas. Yes, from 2 to 8. And so it's really just like the only festival to really celebrate the intersection of like Caribbean and LGBTQ pride. Okay. Again, I think there's a stereotype that Black folks, folks of color, especially Caribbean folks, especially Jamaicans, are really homophobic, and that that these things don't happen. I always like to talk about how Jamaica now has 2 prides,
right?
And,
and
J-Flag, the Jamaica Forum for Lesbian, All Sexuals, and Gays have been just doing really great work to like bring visibility to the community. So I think this Caribbean Pride Fest is really just an extension of that, of showing that like there is this intersection. There are folks who are both Caribbean and LGBTQ.
Right.
So it'll be great. It's from 2 to 8. It's free. There'll be just great, music, food from all the different countries. And then Amara La Negra, she is going to be the headliner, and she's from Love and Hip Hop Miami.
Okay, I saw the imagery of her.
And there will be carnival costumes on display.
Oh, wow.
And I will be wearing a carnival costume.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I like every now and then I like to femme it up, and I was like, if
you're
there's
very lean.
If there's ever an occasion, I mean, I know I'm pretty lean. I'm a little vain, that's why I'm going, because I know it's going to be.
So is this all natural, or is it like you go to the gym? Or
I do the gym of like bacon and candy.
Oh, gosh.
No,
it's so wrong.
It's really wrong.
I have to go
it's
to the
really
gym.
wrong. No, I got to get better about like eating healthy. Like,
but that's great.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're gonna have on a whole.
So I'm gonna have on a whole to do. We actually have rehearsals tomorrow.
Wow.
I'm just like getting ready for it. I'm just ready to be extra.
That's great. Have you done that before?
I have not done that before.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's a big deal.
I mean, hey, because I remember growing up and my mom talking about doing carnival.
Okay,
like in Jamaica, like going downtown, all the big thing, mass camp, and all of these different things.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, like when will I ever get the opportunity?
Right. This is great. I was looking forward to it, and now I'm looking forward to it even more.
Come check it out.
Like, that is bold. That is great. Yeah, I love that. Yes. So let's see here. everybody's a little queer. Hey, Nikki, thanks for joining. Thank you, everyone, for joining. There's something here blocking some of the...
how do we get
but
that
I'm
off?
scared to this
touch
blue
it,
thing here.
yeah.
I'm scared to touch it. Try another way of going. Okay. So I must
Just
let that
leave
be.
it
Yes. Okay, I know someone there is saying something is great.
Yes,
about you.
something is, I mean...
Yeah, I'm not, this is, as I said, it's not my phone, so I don't want to do anything. Today we had to just kind of be creative. Yes. So it's interesting in terms of being Jamaican, being Caribbean, being queer. And do you think, and I don't know if you know, like, do you feel like mainstream Jamaica is becoming more accepting of us, or do you know? I don't know.
It's hard to say, because, like, it's again, all of this is really topical. I was talking to my uncle and his wife the other day, and she was talking about how it's just so accepted in America and all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm dealing with kids who are, like, you know, getting bullied or, like, you know, so...
Yes,
and
it's
I'm, you know, or, like,
yeah.
you know, trans women are being,
and someone just, a young boy just took his life.
Exactly,
right,
exactly. So, yeah, in Alabama last month, like, Nigel Shelby was a 15-year-old, and he was being bullied and harassed at school, and he took his own life. And, you know, I feel like we're in an epidemic of, like, black youth committing suicide, and then black LGBTQ youth. Again, we've already talked about the stats. And so it's, you know, when I think of instances like that, you know, we're not there yet.
Right.
I think...
So maybe, like, but in comparison to in Jamaica, it's
Which
like,
is,
America's so accepting, but when they're here, there's still
exactly.
kids getting teased.
Exactly,
and
I think it's a difference of how you evaluate progress, and there's still going to be folks who are like, oh, we want all the rights. I was reading, recently there's an op-ed in The Gleaner, which is, you know, the Jamaican national newspaper. Right. And J-Flag had written an article about bullying of LGBTQ youth in schools. And I mean, I made the mistake of reading the comments, and it was, again, like this notion of how, you know, why we have to focus on gays over everyone else. Like, when I went to school, everyone made fun of my big Ed monocnies and all these different things, and, like, you know, just all the other insults that they had. And I think that, like, people don't get that it's still an issue. I think you might see it in the news, or, like, everyone is gay, it's fabulous, we're doing all right, but it's, like, again, that intersectionality, that, like, different people, you know, marriage was a big deal, but it was a big deal for some folks, you know? Like, we're at the point now where, like, you know, folks are attacking trans rights and attacking trans folks, and I think that, like, there is this backlash. And so, you know, for me, it has gotten better, and it's comparably more better now here in America than it is in Jamaica at this point. But I think that, like, you know, everything isn't perfect, and there's still work to be done.
I see. Monique is saying the gym of bacon and candy is working for you. Yeah, I'm extremely jealous over here because I have to go to the real gym several days a week, and I'm battling sugar, like chocolate.
I'm trying to cut back on sugar, and, you know, when you try to cut back on sugar, you really realize that, like,
how addictive it is.
Yes, that
like,
it's like.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I stopped smoking cigarettes probably 20-something years ago. I don't drink alcohol. I do, like, and then chocolate is like banging at my door, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm here. So I'm like, cigarettes is like one of the most addictive things on the planet. So I know, but I'm a kind of an all or noneer. Like, I can stop the chocolate, but I feel sad to think, like, wow, I'd have to stop it forever. So if I do forever, I can do forever. I just can't, like, it's harder to, like, oh, I'll just have chocolate a couple of times. Then I'm like, so yeah, to the gym.
Here's the thing, though, but, like, then I have, like, no, like, reinforcement to, like, you know, negative reinforcement to go to the gym, to eat better. I'm trying, though, because I'm getting older, and I'm just like, okay, like,
yeah. You have, like, no waste.
I want to, like, you know, like, I was home this past weekend, and, like, everyone from, like, you know, my grand to my uncle to my mom.
I can imagine.
was just like, well, you need to eat. What are you doing down there? Why are you so skinny? And so, like, yeah, I'm very MAGA. I've always been MAGA.
So your family, more people like you, or not really? Huh? Are more people in your family like your build, or, like, you're, like, the exception?
I think it's because I haven't had a kid yet.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was going to say, now, I was very thin.
Yeah.
And to the point, I just tell you, one of my sons, people would stop me in New York City. It's where I have both of my kids. People would stop me before I had kids, and were like, you need to eat some food. Strangers in New York City. I was 92 pounds before I had my first kid. And then after that was, like, in the low 100s. I won't say where I am now, but I was maga. But after I had my first kid, who you just met, Masai, I remember I shot up, my 50 pounds, came back down maybe 40. And then I had another kid, and that, my second son, that was like the rest of my, since that, he's gonna be 18. Since that, I'm working on, still, on losing some of that baby weight.
No,
It's like, so yeah, so if you do have a baby, I think it depends too, like, but yeah, and like what age you have the kid too. So yeah, but yeah, so maybe that's your,
it, but you know.
your advantage. So then maybe for the rest, I don't know what you're doing, but
I mean,
hey.
this can't end with me. I just said that. Wow,
That's
I
great.
really am that vain. But no,
That's
I
great.
really,
No.
I
Celebrate
do.
it. No, I feel like if I was as thin as you, like I don't even know if I would cover my stomach. Like I'd have on like the shirt would be tied right here, and then the tie, and then the stomach would just be out.
See,
you
and
know,
like
so
I struggle with that. Pride season is coming up. Pride season is coming up, and you know, I've been inspired by one of my colleagues to really like. I want to crop top it up. So maybe I'll do more of that this summer.
Good question here from Caroline. What books are you reading?
Oh goodness, putting me on the spot. At this moment, no books.
You're not
really.
reading. So what's something you read recently?
It's
been a while.
It's been a while because I
Yeah.
find that I'm mostly just reading articles.
Okay.
Or I'm really interested in race and constructs of race. So like a book that I'm like reading in the background is White. I've completely forgotten the title of the guy, but he's it's basically talking about the constructs of whiteness.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm really interested also in constructs of race and how that relates. You know.
Well, it's interesting because I know you left Jamaica young, but Jamaica just had such a different, I think, interpretation of race. And then you come to America, and it's a very different interpretation of race.
Yes.
And it's just so prevalent and pervasive, like how important it is. So my bachelor's I started in Black Studies. And this is in the 90s, and some people were like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, oh yeah, what am I? But I just was like, so like, just desiring like to know more about like why was race so important? Why is it? It's still important in Jamaica, because most poor people are Black, right? Africans who are poorer compared to other races. But I just was like just yearning for like the information, and did a class with history of film and TV and Black folks, which I had no idea. In Jamaica we had like TV, we were making our films, you know, and so much like African culture, American culture, the history of it. So I certainly relate to that like yearning. I think because being gay has become so prominent for me, I've focused more now on LGBTQ issues, but in my earlier time of my life, earlier chapters, it was really much more just trying to like navigate and figure out race and see what was happening here. I see that there's a question or so. Hey Jazz, thanks for joining. We'll have to wait till that goes up a little bit. Something about I'm so annoyed.
Music, yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
But no, so it's interesting for race, because when I came to America, I think that was when I really started understanding race. In Jamaica, you know, out of many one people, so you see a lot of different Jamaicans, a lot of people of African descent, but a lot of mixed race Jamaicans.
A lot of mixed race.
And so it's a lot of mixed race Jamaicans, but we all speak patois, you know.
Right.
So I would see white folks sometimes, and then they'd open their mouth, and it's like okay. And when I came to America, it was sort of like okay, like, you know, why do people not like Black folks? And I became very aware of what race was, and I think being Jamaican, being like a Black immigrant, sometimes there are these dynamics that kind of pit Caribbean or not, you know, Black immigrants against African Americans. And so I think that also kind of informed, you know, just again, like how race is a construct. Strangely enough, I kind of went like the opposite end in terms of like coming around to race. I guess because like I'm Black and I live this stuff. My undergrad and my master's are in like Russian, Central and East European studies. So I'm actually kind of like, I was really fascinated with like Slavic folks and with like Eastern Europe. And I think through looking at how, you know, studying this part of the world and looking at how race was constructed there, it's been interesting and kind of like broadening, like just again, how I understand race and like particularly like Black and whiteness, you know.
Right, yeah. I mean, I feel like in Jamaica, and I do write and talk about it, it just race wasn't something that felt like an obstacle of any kind. I felt like, I remember at some point noticing, and my closest friend, my best friend from college here in the States, she's African American, and she actually helped me see some things like, well, are there poor white people? You know, because I was like, oh, race doesn't matter at all. And she's like, so I got to see like, okay, so most of the people who are poor are African people. The people who are mixed race are more likely to be of privilege. So there's something going on.
There's colorism.
There's colorism.
And classism.
But it still is not like people, I feel in America, it's daily race. And in Jamaica, it really wasn't. It was more like, you know, who's you know, I was in very much like middle class world, like whose dad owns what, you know, shade and hair and money, but not so much like black, white, you know. And some of the white folks, when they come here, they're black people. You know, some people who are like white Jamaican, I know a few people who are like, I thought I was white till I moved to America. And you realize that, no, you're not white at all. Yeah.
So you just see how it all, it shifts and it changes, and it's all a construct.
Yeah, it's interesting how, and the things like something like this, I was like, hold on. So some Europeans came to Africa, kidnapped us, brought us to the Caribbean, to America, had us work for free for hundreds of years, beat us, brutalized us, raped us, all this stuff. And then they're angry with us. Like, I'm like, and then you hate us. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, we work for free. You should think that we hate them, and we actually don't. As a people, black people are not like, we hate white people. Black people are not. No. It's more the other way around. I'm like, but wouldn't you be like the person who worked for, and that's just like, we hate you because you won't work for free anymore.
White supremacy is intoxicating, you know?
Yeah.
So
yes.
You know, it's funny, one of the professional development courses that were being offered today was one on like LGBTQ history and curricula. And we were talking, my colleague and I were talking about historical memory and sort of how, you know, part of the reason like why it's so hard for us to like have these conversations around race and stuff is that we have a complete different memory and attachment to like these things that have happened in our past. I mean, I think of how it's so easy for folks to be like, oh, get over it. It was like 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, get over it. Yeah, you know, these are the same people who latch on to like any little bit of like some identity or something like, you know, to... They understand the significance of it, of being able to fit, you know, to know where their grandparents were from or what little village in Europe,
I know,
or all these little things,
right.
you know, and so then at the same time you understand that significance and how it means something to you from 100 years ago, 150 years ago, whatever. So, and you realize it wasn't that long ago.
It's not that long
and that we
ago.
still
It's
have
not.
like systems and institutions from that time that were like imbued with like, you know, the biases from that time that like are still...
When I moved to South Florida, I go to like meetings in the community and see people who didn't look that old who are like, oh yeah, I was in a segregated school in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm like, wow, so that's really just not long ago. If they're still here with us, hanging out at events, and they're like, I grew up in a segregated school, it's not can't be that far.
Like, and I'm like blanking on this. There was the last lynching that happened. There's a lynching that happened in Broward County, I want to say in the 1940s. And if not earlier, and like in the photo of like the lynching, there's like 2 young girls, and those women are still alive today. You know, I think it's like that's such a literal, like these people are alive. They're like in this time. It wasn't that long ago, like, you know. And so I think people often forget, particularly with Florida, because it's Florida, that like it was still the South,
right. It's just around the corner. Yeah. Are you guys into soca music? Okay, that's a question here. Are you guys? I am not particularly into soca music. I like probably 3 songs.
Same here. Whatever songs like my mom was playing when I was growing up. I dabble in dancehall. I just love like house.
Okay, house.
Like, house.
Yeah, I grew up with 2 main music. Well, I guess 3: reggae music, dancehall music, and hip hop. No, it's hard. A lot of dancehall music is homophobic. Yeah. So I was playing the music, I was celebrating it, I was dancing to it, and now it's like obviously not.
Exactly. It's like it just kind of cuts you differently.
So, but I can appreciate the non-homophobic dancehall music and a lot of the culture, and same for hip hop. Yeah, and Rich says white supremacy has no sense of accountability. Yeah, no question. So yes, we're gonna be wrapping up. As Tiffany said, this Saturday in Fort Lauderdale, there is Caribbean Pride Fest. Let's see, it's like a struggle. Okay, white supremacy has no sense of accountability and wants us to forget slavery and move on. Yet, I
don't want to hit that C more and then everything goes
I know,
away.
The other people can see it. I know, so yes.
But yeah, so this Saturday,
May 11th in Fort Lauderdale, free at the Heisinger Park. From 2 to 8, there's gonna be music, everything, fabulous performances. Food. Tiffany in the pride. This is where in the carnival costume.
And the belly will be out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so looking forward to that. And so I always close with what's called Queer Qonversation closing questions. And so. What inspires you?
That's just so loaded. Brevity is not my life.
Okay, because it's kind of like
I don't know, just like people. I really just love humanity. I love being alive. I feel like I hate that, like, because of other people, some people's time on earth, their existence is just really, like, horrible.
Yeah.
So I just, like, you know, just want to have more people enjoy, like, the experience of existence. I love that. Sounds a little...
And this is not one of the questions that just came in my mind, because Caroline asked what you're reading, and I was thinking, some of your style of speaking feels like you might be writing. Do you write or think of writing?
I would love to write. I can't. I go to, like, write, and it just, there's nothing comes. It's
wow.
Writing's really difficult.
It is challenging. I write, and it's challenging.
And I've written academically, you know, or for, like, mass consumption, you know, for so long that it's, like, I don't journal. So it's something that it was my 2019 resolution. It's halfway through. Hasn't really
And what do you imagine writing?
I don't know. Like, I think I'm still trying to, like, figure out if, like, my voice has value. So maybe
it does.
just, like...
So we could figure that out right here. It has value.
No, but just, like, whatever, commenting on things, like, you know, but I feel like everyone's doing that now. So I don't know. Just writing about things.
Yes, Callie. Callie is saying, guys, soca and certain dancehall is definitely...
Send us the good tunes.
Yeah, you can put it up.
I'm always open to requests.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, nice. And Nikki here, thank you so much. She put in the link to the event.
Yes.
So people click that, just say that you're coming, and even if you don't click it, but they get the information and join us on Saturday. So so you're just saying that you're wondering if your voice has value, and I answered it for you here today. It has value.
So now
you
I have to
write. Yeah, and it's hard. I
write.
write as well, and the more personal writing is a harder thing to write, you know? So sometimes, I mean, the more vulnerable things are more challenging. And I also feel like when we judge ourselves sometimes with writing. So it's like, I'm saying stuff that it's my own advice I need to take as well as I do, because I do write, but I have so much more to write about that I'm not doing. So I'd say, like, parts of that is me judging my writing. Like, is this, I know my voice is value, like your voice is value, but it's like, is this writing good enough to be sharing this particular story as compared to, you know, I do a Sun Sentinel weekly opinion, and I do that, and I feel like, it's 100 words for each little thing, got it out, there you go. But not to share my story, my personal life, is like, it's this grand thing. And it's like to kind of chop it down and be like, no, just write. So it's hard though, but yes. Okay, back to our closing questions. So what makes you laugh? I love this. That question makes you laugh.
I don't know. Like, I've really gotten into, like, my partner really loves really bad puns. So, you know, if she, like, sends me a bad pun, I'm particularly, like, a groan laugh. I don't know, just things in the moment, you know? Like, I find that I laugh often and easily, so it's just hard to say.
That is great. I love that, yeah. And your partner is English is her second language.
Yes.
So that's really very smart to be like, to get a pun.
She's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, that's great.
Sometimes she tries to, like, do, like, a French-English pun, and I'm like, I'm not at that level yet.
Wow.
And
are you learning French?
Yes, I am. So I've taken classes on and off over the past few years, and then I was in France for almost, like, maybe 18 to 20 months.
That's great.
I'm taking classes now actually at Broward College.
Good for
taking
you.
their intensive thing for 6 weeks to get ready for my trip over there.
And when you're there, when you're with her, is she speaking to you in French?
No, she speaks to me in English.
She needs to speak to you in
French.
I
know. I think
she needs to speak to you in French. But I know it's hard. My parents both, even though we're Jamaican, my parents both spoke Spanish. And especially when I moved to New York City at 15 and my school was predominantly Spanish-speaking kids, I begged my mom to speak to me in Spanish. And she tried, but it was just like sometimes it's just easier to learn English. So I'm like, Mom, please. So she did some. But I would have liked more, but it is hard because at some point, I'm not understanding what she's saying, so she's just going to say it in English. You know, okay, so...
we're getting better, you know.
Yeah, that's good. You're doing a lot of work to get to it, too. You know, and you could also flip it on her, like, don't answer the English. Some people are like, don't answer but, you know, when they speak the wrong language, like, I'm not going to answer.
No, sure, we're working towards that.
Yeah. Okay, so, what's sexy?
What's sexy? Oh goodness. I don't know. I love women. I love nerdy women.
Nerdy women.
I just love a mixture of, like, confidence, anxiety, and intelligence.
I love that.
I recently watched like Knock Down the House and like just fell for Alexandria, or what is it, Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay.
I was just like, oh, she's the congresswoman from the Bronx.
Okay,
So
I know who that is.
Yeah, so it's just like, you know,
okay,
that kind of just, yeah, I think like I just love intelligence. I love people who are confident.
Excuse me. That might be my first live sneeze, or second. I think I said that before, so I guess it's second live sneeze.
Darn, I thought I was gonna be first. But I think I like people who are confident in their quirkiness.
Okay, that sounds great. I love that. And then the last question is, what's so great about being a lesbian?
Women. I really feel like just for me over the years, I've really come into that. Like I do say queer sometimes because I do think, you know, I identify broadly politically, and also I understand that sexuality can't be so like, you know, labeled, but I also like to be a lesbian. That was what I came out and what I've come up in, and so I think for me it's community. It's just I love sharing. I just love being around women who love women. I love it too. I think like I don't know. I say if I wasn't a lesbian, I think I would still love women. I just have a lot of strong women in my life. I think you know, just everything around history, around the just women, everything that we've had happen to us. So, I don't know. I love community. I love just like women.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Okay, what's your we see a question here. Caroline is asking, what's your Instagram?
It's the Obwich. It's TheObwich. You'll just see a bunch of random things. I'm really trying to get better about like social media.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
You know, it is a challenge.
I can be good with it, and then a couple of days I'm like,
exactly.
And then you're like, I should go back and do something.
You know, I'm like, all right, 20 photos. How can I choose like a few? And who scrolls through all those on Instagram?
Right. So I didn't see you. When I posted the graphic, I didn't see you on Instagram. I put in Tiffany Richards, and like all these people came up.
There's like a million.
So say it again.
TheObwich. And that's
okay.
It's like a bad pun I made.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
A bad pun. Okay, so on Instagram. So thank you everybody here for joining us. Queer Conversation will be back in June. This month I went from weekly to monthly. I was enjoying the weekly, but it was a lot. So the monthly has been great. Thank you for staying on board with me, everyone. Please share this and please join me in June. And thank you so much for going live with me and for all this great work you're doing in the community.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for all the great work you're doing as well.
Thank you. Okay, bye everyone.
Jamaica to the world.
Yeah, I know, right? Look at these Jamaicans.
You know.
They're Jamaicans. Let's see here.